world and Hollywood were devastated by the news of Diane Keaton's passing on October 11, 2025. The 79-year-old movie legend who wowed viewers with her memorable parts in films like The Godfather and Annie Hall has now passed away. The final discoveries of her 15-year romance with Al Pacino, a Hollywood romance that few dared to mention publicly, were perhaps more stunning than her death. As Diane Keaton drew to a close, she spoke candidly about her time with Al Pacino and the painful reasons behind their split. He never committed to marrying Diane, even though she supported him through his career and financial struggles. Hidden truths never made public. Diane was very open and honest about long simmering tensions, hurts, and disappointments. What were the most painful realities of this idyllic romance? Let's watch today's video and find out all the stunning details. Diane Keaton showed up unannounced at a casting call in Harlem. Anxiety and exhilaration fill my heart. She played the role of Kay and was a young, unproven actor. Adams in The Godfather, a film that Francis Ford Coppola and she were both uncertain would be a success. Al Pacino, a man with soul-piercing eyes, a lovely boyish smile, and a deep voice that seemed to speak cosmic secrets, was the first man she encountered there. From across the room, Diane stood quietly watching him, her heart pounding in an unusual rhythm. What a brilliant lunatic, she thought to herself. Someone who seems to have lost touch with their inner child, constantly making wild gestures and sharing passionate anecdotes. The part of Michael Corlett, which would alter the course of his life, was proving difficult for Al, who was 31 years old at the time, to maintain. Their chemistry was palpable before the cameras even started rolling. Due to her timid personality, Diane concealed her emotions, much like a valuable jewel in a weathered wooden cradle. Working on The Godfather set was like being in a surreal dream. For a brief second, Diane and Al were together. From fleeting looks to quick exchanges in between shots, they shared concern that the picture will bomb at the box office, collaborating in a tiny Manhattan bar to unwind after a long day, sharing drinks and laughter. If this movie flops, what do we do next? Diane's question in a playful but genuine tone, Al once inquired. Diane merely grinned without uttering a word. Still, a fire was starting to burn within of her. She adored his incessant chatter, his dedication to his craft, and the fact that he could make her laugh and feel unique just by being himself. But that love was still just a mild euphoria. It wasn't strong enough to bring them closer. Their affair didn't take off until they reunited on the set of The Godfather Part II in 1974. Al extended an invitation to Diane to a cozy restaurant in Manhattan one late evening following a long day of filming. He gazed at her with more gentleness than before, in the midst of low illumination and sips of red wine. In a deep, mysterious voice, he whispered, "Diane, do you know how special you are?" Her heart was racing, and Diane felt her cheeks turn red. Over the course of that evening, they discussed everything from movies and theater to their deepest worries, hopes, and the simple things that brought them joy. They started dating discreetly, without any drama from that point on. Diane and Al's romance was far from the conventional Hollywood coupling, complete with glitzy premieres and magazine photographs, much like how two artists discover each other in the midst of life's lines. Rather, it was in everyday occurrences that they crossed paths. As they spent evenings together in Diane's California apartment, Al would lie on the sofa and spill his guts about his aspirations for the stage, and Diane would listen with an obvious grin on her face. They talked about the movies they would like to create and swapped recommendations for good reads as they walked along the shore. Diane loved Al's carefree attitude and the way he poured his heart and soul into every part. Still, there was an unseen distance that she could feel. Al was like the wind. He was constantly on the go and never stayed around long enough to feel truly loved. Even more issues arrived in the 1980s, with the hits Annie Hall and Baby Boom under her belt. Diane had reached the pinnacle of her career. She continued to dream of starting a family, though. The sound of children playing and a partner who was willing to settle down were her three main desires. However, Al, being an independent spirit, appeared unable to do it. "What a hubby! I have no idea what I'm doing." When Diane attempted to bring up some future plans, he once half-joked and half-seriously responded. Emotional breakups and passionate reconciliations were part of Diane's life. On nights when she least expected it, Al would show up at her door with a bottle of wine and a sly grin, as if nothing had happened in the intervening time. On every occasion, though, she questioned whether she had ever been his sole love. Even though Al was filming in Rome in 1989, he wrote Diane a letter. The hurriedly scrawled sentences on hotel stationery held immense significance. "I will love you forever, Diane." Her heart pounded as she held the letter tightly. For once, Al didn't try to hide his emotions behind jokes or sideways looks, he just let them out. Diane read the letter over and over again, hoping to find some hope for the future in its precious words. In her heart, she understood that a family or a proposal were not the definition of forever for Al. Like an incomplete poetry, the love of an artist was lovely but fragile. Commitment was the main source of their disagreement. This was too long for Diane, who was in her 30s. Al failed to fulfill her longing for a stable environment and a home. Her voice quivered as she questioned, "Al, have you ever thought about a life together?" Conversations about marriage often ended in heavy silence. He continued, Al only looked at her, eyes full of pain, silent. Rumors circulated about Al's closeness to other women, though none were confirmed. Diane tried not to let jealousy overshadow love. But doubt crept in, like a small crack in the perfect picture she once painted of them. Yet Diane never gave up on Al. During this time, she also witnessed his financial struggles. When Al's $50 million fortune nearly evaporated, he spent lavishly, from buying multiple cars and cell phones to spending hundreds of thousands on landscaping while employing an accountant. Later convicted of fraud, Diane remembered his worry and pressure, unable to stand by and watch him struggle alone. Silently, she helped Al by lending money to maintain his lifestyle and morale. She not only lent funds but encouraged him to continue acting, reminding him of his genius. Al, in those rare moments, expressed gratitude. "Diane, you're the only one who never abandons me," he said once, sitting together in a small cafe, eyes for the first time not evasive. Diane came to the realization that their love, whatever its flaws, was worth battling for in these moments. Thanks to her encouragement, Al was able to get his life back in order and keep taking jobs to help him financially stabilize. He did this through roles in shows like Jack and Jill and commercials. In 1990, while filming part A of The Godfather, Diane finally resolved to confront facts. Anticipating an uncertain future was no longer an option for her. While Diane was back in her New York apartment one evening, she locked eyes with Al. "Al, this will either end or we get married," she declared with a combination of firmness and trepidation. There was an eerie stillness. With expressions betraying his anguish, Al remained still. Upon hearing his words, Diane had already guessed the correct response. Leaving her hopes of starting a family with Al behind, she departed from the flat. There was no drama or arguing during the split. The news broke Diane's heart. She stepped out into the chilly night thinking, "I love him." However, she couldn't wait forever. After that, Diane and Al essentially lost touch. They seemed to shun one another at the Godfather gatherings, as if being in each other's company brought back too many bad memories. When Diane caught a glimpse of Al at a premiere, she felt her heart sink. He was still sporting that innocent smile. They drank together to forget about their worries that the movie would be disastrous for their careers. Yet at this point in time, they merely existed as memories. Al was never hated by Diane. Whenever his name came up in interviews, she would smile and read the letter from Rome on lonely nights. "He was the love of a chapter in my life," she reminded herself, attempting to move on. Diane Keaton never got married after Al Pacino, but she did adopt 2 kids, Duke and Dexter, in the 2000s, creating a tiny, loving family all by herself. As a mother, Keaton found a sense of balance and joy that her work had been lacking, and she also discovered new elements of herself. At the same time, Al Pacino's private life included relationships with Lucilla Pack and Beverly D'Angelo, among others. Olivia Rose, Anton James, Julie Marie, and him make up his family of 4. Pacino and his fiancée Noral Fala had a son, Roman, in 2023 when he was 83 years old. Pacino has an iconic and incredibly human image because, despite his age, he keeps discovering and experiencing new parts of life. Much of Al Pacino's memoir Sonny Boy is devoted to contemplation of his 15-year romance with Diane Keaton. He says that his time with Diane was one of those unusual pairings where they both discovered harmony and solace in each other's company. Pacino put it this way: "I found a rhythm in the right temperature and it felt so right." This passage highlights Diane's role in his life as a spiritual companion as well as a lover. She brought him stability and peace. Pacino has always treasured the fact that she helped him get through a terrible financial crisis in the late 1980s by referring him to attorneys and helping him work through his personal problems. In Keaton's last years, she maintained a little nook of her home adorned with mementos of Al Pacino. Always prominently displayed among the many books, framed images, and mementos from their time together was a picture of him. Diane would occasionally look over at it, grinning nostalgically. Her eyes would occasionally show a hint of melancholy. As a subtle reminder of an enduring love that had molded her identity, it stood tall. Memories of their shared laughter, soft whispers, and brief emotional moments would occasionally wash over Diane, even decades after the fact. She came clean in subsequent interviews about the fact that she had never really moved on from him. Her spirit was forever altered by Pacino, a scar that clarified why she never tied the knot or pursued love again with the same intensity. Independent and beautiful, Diane Keaton was the woman everyone saw. However, deep down, she hoped that she may rediscover her love for him. She treasured the idea that in an alternate timeline they may cross paths once more. That hope, somber and steady, was a solace and a source of profound, everlasting grief that accompanied her right up until the very end. A tumultuous romance involving the renowned filmmaker Woody Allen and Diane Keaton existed before to Al Pacino. Allen and Keaton first crossed in 1969, while Keaton was a cast member in Allen's Broadway play It Again, Sam. A short romantic relationship formed as they were immediately captivated by each other's individuality and inventiveness. Keaton was an influential figure who helped Allen make numerous timeless pictures, even though their romance did not endure long, particularly 1977's Annie Hall, for which she was nominated for Best Actress at the Academy Awards. Despite this, their relationship did not stop with their breakup. Rather, it evolved into a strong friendship and enduring creative partnership. Together, Allen and Diane Keaton made films that would go down in American cinematic history, and Keaton would go on to star in many more of Allen's features. Diane Keaton openly supported her friend Woody Allen and confirmed her trust in him when adopted daughter Dylan Farrow accused him of sexual abuse in 2018. Particularly in light of the burgeoning Nas Media movement, this public defense exacerbated tensions between the general population and the art world. In the face of immense societal pressure, Keaton remained firm in her support for her long-lost friend. We need to know more about Diane Keaton and her life story. Tell me about her professional life. Diane Keaton was born into a typical theatrical household on January 5, 1946. Mrs. Highland Park 1955 was Dorothy Diane Keaton, her mother. Like a tiny flame kindling ambition, Diane's memory was deeply imprinted by the image of her mother standing triumphantly on stage when Diane was 9 years old. Dorothy was hell-bent on giving her daughter the life she had never known. Diane painstakingly documented 85 diaries brimming with photographs, articles, and experiences from her voyage, demonstrating that love was not limited to teachings or embraces. Diane stumbled upon this treasury of memories after Dorothy died away in 2008. They would later form the basis of her memoir. Watching her mother compete in beauty pageants also had an impact on Diane's formative years. In addition to being Dorothy's quest for glory, these stages were also rich storytelling experiences that instilled a love of performance and a sense of wonder in Diane. She watched her mother, even at an early age, use beauty as a means of storytelling and passionate living. Jack Newton Ignatius Hall, her father, was an Irish real estate broker and construction engineer, and he appeared to be ensconced in serenity and duty. But a tempest lurked within, unseen by the naked eye. Throughout his latter days afflicted by disease, Jack murmured to Diane on the walk home from UCLA Medical Center that he had always despised his job and wished he had been more daring. For Diane, that confession was shocking. It was more than simply words, it was the compressed expression of a lifetime's worth of remorse. After hearing her father's words, Diane became unusually determined. Despite Jack's feelings of being stifled by the world of statistics and real estate negotiations, Diane was inspired to follow her own creative path by his regret of fire. She channeled the lessons she learned as a youngster and the grief she witnessed in her family into her desire to try new things, build a career without asking for approval or watering down her true self by taking chances in odd roles. Due to her father's precarious business and the family's meager income, her 1950s Los Angeles life was fraught with difficulty. As a girl, Diane used to shop at Goodwill and other secondhand stores instead of the fancy boutiques her friends frequented. Using an antique McCall sewing machine, her mother created one-of-a-kind ensembles from discarded garments. Diane learned to persevere in the face of adversity, be creative when resources are little, and develop her signature style as a result. Surviving artfully is contained in every bit of material. And Diane picked up the same attitude about life. Diane learned yet another lesson from her family's upheaval and frequent moves. Time is a finite resource. She was able to refine her acting chops after that class, having the ability to portray audience-loving personalities that are quirky, beautiful, and nervous. Through her experiences, both good and bad, Diane learned to take a step back and enjoy the big picture as much as she could in the here and now. Diane began to put herself out there at an early age. Her father inspired a thirst for adventure and independence, while her mother fostered an appreciation for the stage and narrative. Diane had turned her garden into a bustling stage by the time she was 3 years old, putting on elaborate performances for the neighbors in costumes her mom had made. None of these minor roles were played for laughs. All the characters, settings, and emotions from the stories were true. Gave a performance prior to learning to read. Diane started to really shine while she was a student at Santa Ana High School. In her final year of high school, she took on the role of Blanche DuBois in Desire, A Streetcar, and Little Mary Sunshine, a role that many teenagers are afraid to try. She was taken aback by the overwhelming strength of the stage lights, the clapping sounded like thunder, and the performance brought her a profound sense of joy and fulfillment, filling an inner void and bringing her to life. Diane found out that the name Diane Hall was already taken when she tried to join the Actors Equity Association. She didn't just pick a name out of thin air. Instead, she paid homage to the person who had first inspired her love of performing by going back to her roots and using Keaton, her mother's maiden name. A simple change of letters would not have sufficed. As Diane broke away from her father's Irish surname, she continued her mother's theatrical costume and dream history. For this reason, her name was associated with a legacy of artistic achievement. Diane did very well in the school's theater club but was uninterested in classical beauty or acting. From a girl who was thin and uneasy, she gained a few more pounds. Diane didn't run away, she turned her clothes into a weapon. Dressed in all black fishnet tights and white lipstick, she was less invisible than before. Style became insecurity with time. Years later, while strolling through Soho, Diane noticed strong-willed ladies and drew inspiration for her legendary clothing line from their examples. Excessive suit sizes, broad-brimmed hats, and muted hues. Rather than attracting, her clothing served to conceal her. Unfortunately, it also became one of the most recognizable styles in Hollywood. Diane followed in her mother's footsteps and entered a beauty pageant, but she soon learned the competition was more about looks than talent. Surprising her loved ones, she finally gave up and experienced public defiance for the first time. Her style has been defined by that choice. She should just be herself instead of trying to fit in with everyone else. When she was 17 years old, she experienced her first heartbreak after falling for a high school basketball player who turned a blind eye to her and made fun of her distinctive laugh. Once a distinctive sound, Diane began to see her laugh as a curse, and she developed a sense of self-defense comedy in which she would make jokes in order to ward off potential harm. As Tony Roberts put it, she has a way of making you feel like a kid again because she never pretends to be anyone other than her wonderfully strange self. Diane, from the humble beginnings of her childhood to the bright lights of Hollywood, found endless inspiration in every moment, whether it was in the midst of joy or sorrow. Diane Keaton attempted in 1964 after dropping out of Santa Ana College after only one semester. However, she never aspired to attend college. When Diane, then 22 years old, landed a supporting role in the 1968 Broadway musical Hair, it was the break that launched her career. The production's virtually naked scenes and untamed, defiant attitude made it famous. The producers insisted that Diane drop 10 pounds before she could even step foot on stage. She was thought to be overweight, particularly for the exposing sequences. At 5 feet 8 inches and 139 pounds, Diane remained rigid under intense scrutiny. She stood firm and refused to strip down to her underwear. Nevertheless, Diane's health started to deteriorate due to the undue stress she was under about her looks. In order to keep her slim shape, she picked up the technique of inducing vomiting from another actress. The 5-year nightmare started with what appeared to be a simple trick. Despite the fact that she suffered from teeth rot, heartburn, irregular menstruation, and dangerously high blood pressure, Diane discreetly battled an eating 1968 into 1973. She vomited up to 20,000 calories daily. Diane went through it all by herself because no one else knew. She made a slow but steady recovery after starting treatment every day. Her entire life shifted the second she decided she didn't want to participate in binge eating. Thankfully, Diane's professional life started to take off. She went on the audition list for Woody Allen's 1968 play, Play It Again, Sam. Standing 5 inches taller than Allen, Diane was almost passed up for the part. However, once she stepped onto the stage, her height became irrelevant. The entire casting crew was enchanted by her charisma and talent. Launched on February 12, 1969, the play went on for more than a year with 453 performances, becoming an enormous success. Diane's 1969 Tony Award nomination for her performance as Linda Christie was a major accomplishment that helped pave the way for her success on Broadway and in movies. Playing Kay was the zenith of Diane Keaton's acting career. Adams Corley played Mario in the Godfather films. Keaton played Michael Corley's ex-girlfriend and now wife Kay in the pilot episode. Al Pacino was the beginning of a 15-year romance for her. Kay marries and has 2 children in the decorded Godfather segment. Keaton brilliantly represented Kay's psychological evolution, from first love to disillusionment and resolve, adding complexity to the character. As we watched Michael's further plunge into the criminal underworld, by the third and last part of The Godfather, despite her best efforts, Kay continues to deal with the emotional fallout of her divorce and the lingering effects of the Corley family's past. In 1973, with the release of Sleeper, Diane Keaton's career took another big leap forward. Surprisingly, this satirical sci-fi picture became a smashing success. Diane had gone from being the serious Kay to having a budget of $2 million and a revenue of over $18 million. Adams, the protagonist of The Godfather, Luna Schloer, a quirky, odd, and hilariously unconventional woman of the future, was now her name. This part established Diane's comedic chops and gave spectators their first taste of her enthusiastic, genuine acting style. It wasn't until 1977, 4 years later in Annie Hall, that Diane's star truly began to shine. Inspired by Diane herself, Woody Allen created this persona just for her. The portrayal not only mirrored Diane's actual character, but also gave rise to a cultural phenomenon, from the nickname Annie to her fashion choices and imperfect, spontaneous speech. Diane was a style icon on screen and off thanks to the film, which won multiple Oscars and sparked a fashion trend for baggy suits, broad ties, and soft hats. Looking for Mr. Goodbar was Diane's second unexpected hit that year. As Teresa Dunn, a teacher who leads a double life and explores the seedy underbelly of New York City, she portrayed the role brilliantly. The film's gruesome and disturbing subject matter was derived from the actual murder of Roseanne Quinn. This part showcased Diane's fearlessness and adaptability as an actress, contrasting sharply with Annie Hall. Her courageous performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination, and even her detractors had to admit that she was talented. For a serious Woody Allen picture in 1978, Diane played Renata. There was no hint of romance or comedy this time around. Feelings of isolation, betrayal, and melancholy were important themes in the picture. Diane won over critics with her remarkable talent for subtly evoking compelling emotions. She proved she could convincingly switch gears from comedy to drama in this part, which garnered her a Golden Globe nomination and the prize for Best Foreign Actress from the Spanish Film Academy. Diane made an appearance in the controversial yet financially successful 1979 picture Manhattan. The city looked stunning in black and white with ethereal score. But audiences had conflicting feelings about the romance between Woody Allen's character and a girl of 17 years old. Regardless, the picture became one of Allen's most profitable features and solidified Diane's reputation as an adaptable actress, grossing about $40 million in North America. She is always up for a challenge and can play any role, no matter how dark, charming, or provocative. With 1993's Manhattan Murder Mystery, Diane made a triumphant comeback to Allen's productions after a lengthy hiatus. Diane was cast at the last minute to play the major role after Allen's friendship with Farrow's adoptive daughter caused some problems. Mia Farrow was originally supposed to play the lead. Even under such intense scrutiny, she managed to pull off a remarkable performance, garnering a nomination for Best Actress at the Golden Globes. This was also the last project that Diane and Woody Allen worked on together, which was a major turning point in her cinematic career. Nevertheless, Diane's direction was not without its bumps. The studio meddled in her 2000 picture Hanging Up, removing the most dramatic moments, including Walter Matthau's stirring performances. On the set of The Family Stone in 2005, Diane confronted a personal obstacle: the skin cancer she had been fighting since she was 21 years old. A dying mother was the character she played on screen. On the other hand, Diane still had to take care of her health in the actual world by constantly donning protective gear and sunscreen. In 2018, Diane brought her widow character back to life for book club audiences as she rediscovers love. She played a 72-year-old woman who was still scared of love, who had never been married but had felt enough to make her story relatable. Over $100 million was the film's gross. The series hit new heights with the 2023 release of the sequel, demonstrating that Diane Keaton's magnetism and leadership abilities had not faded. Last but not least, Diane Keaton died in California on October 11, 2085, at the age of 79. Her quick drop in health in her latter months shocked and distressed those closest to her. Among her many health problems, according to some accounts, was a long-term skin carcinoma. Diane Keaton had a secluded existence throughout her life, and that didn't change in her latter days. She avoided the spotlight as much as possible, preferring to spend time with her loved ones. She also recently opened up about how her struggles with skin health issues and eating disorders have impacted her personal life and self-care practices. Among Diane Keaton's many honors throughout her 50-plus-year career was the Academy Award for Best Actress, which she won for her performance in Annie Hall. In 2017, she was also presented with the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award by the American Film Institute. With projects like Summer Camp 2024 and Hanging Up 2000, Keaton dabbled in directing, producing, and writing in addition to acting. Diane Keaton was well known not just for her acting roles but also for her fierce individualism. Despite her single status, she took in Dexter and Duke as adopted children. Keaton also loved animals and would post adorable photos of her pets on social media. She released her first single in 2025, living out her ambition of being a singer in her last months on Earth. Numerous colleagues and fans paid tribute to Diane Keaton upon her passing. The likes of B. Goldie Hawn Midler and Steve Martin were among those who shared their condolences and compliments for her. Many people spoke highly of Keaton, praising her as an exceptional talent, a great friend, and a style and comedy icon. Those who appreciate art and cinema will always hold Diane Keaton in their hearts. Diane Keaton has spoken extensively about her romance with Al Pacino in interviews. From their early days working together on The Godfather to their lasting friendship thereafter, she talked highly of Pacino, praising his commitment to acting, his incredible talent, and his strong sense of self. The stories paint a real, loving, and complicated picture of the connection and romance between the two Hollywood icons, and readers are left to wonder, was it love or just profound affection and friendship?